Hey everyone, welcome to my first video for the EDSE 352 course. Today we're going to discuss the topic of diversity within species, and we're going to talk about some of the potential ways that a teacher could help students to develop a thorough understanding of this topic, as well as navigate some of the possible misconceptions that a student may have. Biodiversity topics in general can be quite complicated because of all the key terms, and I think many students struggle with understanding the relationships between the environment and genetics. So to begin, what is diversity within a species? Diversity within species occurs when there are a variety of genotypes within a given population that interact with the environment to give rise to heritable physical traits known as phenotypes. There are a lot of key terms even in that last sentence, such as population, species, phenotypes, and genotypes. And those terms will be very new to students, so discussion of these terms at the beginning of the year is really important. Another important component of this unit will be helping students to understand the difference between heritable and non-heritable characteristics. A really important thing to consider as a teacher of science is what your students already know or don't know about this topic. As Tomlinson and Moon mentioned, sometimes pre-assessment can be just as effective when used during the unit rather than just before the unit begins. For some students, there may have been as long of a break as 2 years in between grade 7 when they last did kind of a linked topic and Unit A of grade 9, which is the biodiversity topic. So for this topic, I think I would first have students engage in a discussion about what a species is, and then we would probably move on to discussing differences in a particular physical trait, just amongst people in the classroom. So for example, you could talk about how even though everybody in the room is a member of the human species, some people have brown eyes, some people have blue eyes, and maybe even a couple have green or hazel. As another follow-up task to that, you could also have students write on the board, write down their eye color, the eye color of their parents and their siblings, and then discuss why there are differences. Teachers could also ask students to come up with examples of physical traits that aren't passed down by parents to their children through genetics, so things like scars from an injury or being able to play the guitar. In an article by Angela Stockman, she discusses creative methods of pre-assessment that both assess what students already know and help to find out what their anticipations of the topic are. She suggests an activity called First and Final Thoughts. In this exercise, students are asked to write down their thoughts and expectations about the upcoming topic. This can include what the students are excited to learn about, what interests them within the topic, what concept they might think is challenging, and any previous knowledge that they might have. I would pre-prepare this task so that students had a sheet with prompts and would also write a list of key terms on the board for students to reference during this activity as well. There are a variety of misconceptions that students may have about this topic that should be addressed early on in the unit so that students are prepared to learn about evolution and natural selection later on. The first is that genetics are the only factor in determining a physical trait, such as eye color or height, while in reality, genes are only one of two main components in determining variability of a species. The environment can also have a huge role on how your genes are expressed, as mentioned in the program of studies. So for example, how height can be affected by both genes as well as diet. If you have a poor diet, even if your genes mean that you will likely be tall, having a poor diet could result in you being short. The second misconception that students might have is the difference between a species and a population. As defined by the Science in Action 9 textbook, a species is a group of individuals with similar traits that when undergoing reproduction can produce a viable offspring, whereas a population is just all of the individuals of a particular species that exist in the same environment at the same time. This misconception is probably less common at the beginning of the unit, but might become a little bit more prevalent near the end of Unit A when discussing natural selection. In order to address these misconceptions, I think that consistent and varied methods of assessment are essential. If we're always assessing how students are processing information, we can address the misconceptions as they arise. I really enjoyed the idea of giving an exit slip type task by asking students to write down one new thing that they learned every single day on a yellow post-it note, and one thing that they have a question about on a blue post-it note. They could either answer this question overnight, or if many students had the same question, then we could address it as a group and have a group discussion about it the next day. I also really enjoy using case studies to address misconceptions because I think they give students real-life references to connect very key, ambiguous key terms to. So case studies such as twin studies can be studied individually and then discussed as a whole group to address possible sources of misconceptions. Thanks for watching!